Not. The first time I spoke a while back, somebody asked me why I bring up my phone, why I brought it up. Well, it's because it has this nice little clock on it, digital readout here. And I have to do this again. There we go. Anyway, it has this nice little digital readout, and so now you know why I put it here on the stand, what it means when I put it here on the stand. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But no, we'll try to get out on time. I know you dads want to party, and I know you families want to party, but we want to spend a little bit of time in Philippians. We're studying Philippians, and Pastor Rob got us off to a great start last week as he went and did a quick overview of the first chapter, and he nerded on a word, koinonia, and it kind of tells us that we're unique in the fact that we fellowship together. And I'm going to nerd on a word as well today, and we're going to take a look at what that word is going to be in a bit. But it got me thinking, we are supposed to be a unique people. Peter writes in 1 Peter, he says that we are a chosen people, a royal priesthood. And that word chosen there has to do with sojourner, that we are aliens in this land. And so we kind of stand out. We kind of are unique. And we are different than the people around us. And Paul in Romans says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So we're told not to conform to this world. We are non-conformists. And so we don't conform to this world. And today, we're going to find out another way in which we are unique. We're different. There's the world around us just doesn't understand this aspect of us. So I thought, to get us in the right frame of mind on this, we ought to all recite the nonconformist oath. So I would like you to all stand, and I would like you to repeat after me. We're going to recite the nonconformist oath, and we're going to let the whole world know out these walls. We want to just blast it out. We want people to know that we are unique and different. So if you repeat after me, I promise to be different. I promise to be unique. I promise not to repeat what other people say. Good. All right. Have a seat. Have a seat. We are unique. There are some things about us that the world just does not understand. And we're going to take a look at that today in this book of Philippians, which is also called the Epistle of Joy. So first thing on your outline there, the Epistle of Joy. Because the Bible really does talk a lot about joy and about how we need to rejoice. In the New Testament alone, there's 133 times that the noun joy is used or the verb to rejoice is used. So there's a lot of joy in the New Testament, a lot of times that it's referred to. In John 15:10, Jesus says, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. John 16:22, he says that no one will take away your joy. Romans, Paul says the kingdom of God is all about joy. In Galatians 5:22, we find out that joy is one of the fruits of as part of the fruit of the Spirit. And in 1 Peter 1:8, he says, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. So joy is in the Bible. And you know what's interesting? When joy is referenced, it is never referenced outside the context of a relationship with God. Joy is never outside the context of a relationship with God. And then we come to the Epistle of Joy. Why is it called the Epistle of Joy? Why is this called the Book of Joy? It's because in this book alone, joy or rejoice is mentioned 16 times. And if you're a statistician and you do the math, that's 12% of all the joys in the New Testament is right here in the book of Philippians. And so the book of Philippians has quite a bit of joy density in it. It's a book that speaks a lot about joy. And Paul says he rejoices that Christ is proclaimed. He rejoices of his current hardships. They're the deliverance through the prayers of his believers, of the believers. Joy. Paul has joy when the believers are unified and are like-minded. Paul encourages the Philippians to be glad and to be joyful. He says, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. So time and time again, Paul is talking about joy. And so it is true that joy, true joy, is unique to the Christian. And we're going to find out why that is. You know, the world cannot have joy. Now, they will say they do, but what they are really talking about is happiness. They're talking about happiness. So we have the Epistle of Joy, but this Epistle of Joy, this book of joy, shows us a problem with joy. Our problem with joy. You know, Webster's definition is joy is a feeling of great pleasure and happiness. And in fact, if you look up happy, Webster says it's a feeling or showing pleasure or contentment being joyous. So they kind of define one word with the other word. And they're really, to Webster, it's the same thing. The Bible has a very different meaning, apparently, because James says, consider trials pure joy. Paul says we should rejoice in our sufferings. He also says that we should be joyful despite our circumstances. Peter says, rejoicing even though we may have to suffer grief. I mean, do these guys even read a dictionary and understand the word? It's like the Bible is kind of disconnected from what reality is, what we think reality is. And you know, Paul in Philippians drives this point home, drives this kind of disconnect home, because he says in chapter 1, he says, I'm being disappointed by the people around me, but I'm still rejoicing. I have sorrow upon sorrow in chapter 2, but I'm still rejoicing. I've lost all my possessions. I no longer have the status with the Jews that I once had, but I'm rejoicing. I'm in prison, and I'm alone, but I'm still rejoicing. And I don't know about you, but I had a real hard time with this at one point. I kind of got mad at God. Because I was feeling like his definition of joy and what I was reading in the Bible, I was not experiencing. And I kind of had it out with him one time. Many, many years ago, I started to bring this to his attention. Yeah, So I said to him, I said, God, now, first of all, I want you to know, I know that I'm blessed. I know that I have lots to be thankful for. And I don't want you to get the wrong idea here. But I got trials. You know, and this was a time when there was a lot of stress in my life. There was a lot of things going on. I was relatively new dad at the time. We had some deaths in the family at the time. You know, the job was stressful. And I was just feeling weighed down by life. And I said, so I know I got blessings, but man, I am facing all these trials, and I am having a tough time dealing with this. And then I read your word, and you tell me to have joy. In fact, you say, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. It's like a command. You're commanding me to have joy, and I don't feel it. And I don't like the definition that you are giving me about joy. I mean, James says, consider it all joy when you endure trials. Well, I can consider a cow a horse, but that doesn't make the cow the horse, you know. And I'm not feeling the joy. I serve you, and I'm working for you, and I'm studied, and I'm trying to do my best, and I expect that the joy would come from that, but it's not. And so, God, I'm a little bit upset with you right now, and I'm a little bit angry about what kind of a deal you're doing to me here, and I've had it. And I crossed my arms spiritually, and I stood before him, and then God spoke to me. Now, he didn't speak to me audibly because I'm a Baptist and I couldn't handle it, but he did speak to me. He spoke to my heart. And he said this, "Are you through yet?" and that was the moment that I realized, maybe I wasn't as righteously angry as I thought I was. And he goes, "Gary, how about we try this? How about you let me be God and you be you? Can we just try that for a little bit here? Let me be God and let you be you. And now let me show you what joy really is." And it took a while. It took years. I mean, I kept studying Scripture. I kept trying to work things through and things. But over the years, I've come to the realization I was focused on a definition of joy, but that wasn't my problem. My problem was, where was my source of joy coming from? Where was I getting my joy from? And this is why Webster's definition falls woefully short in terms of what joy is. Because joy in the definition is all about what's happening around you, which is where we get happiness. And yeah, God wants happiness, but happiness is pretty much a foreign concept in Scripture, because God is after joy. And when we understand where joy is, we know and we feel and we experience it despite our circumstances. So, we have this Epistle of Joy, and the joy shows us the problem with joy, and now it also reveals the source of joy. And Paul gives away this answer when he writes in verses 3 through 6. Let's look at that. "I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Jesus Christ." So he says, I'm praying with joy. There's that J word. He's praying with joy. Well, where's that joy coming from? And he says, I'm praying with joy because of your partnership. Well, that's close as far as a source of joy, but a partnership is still a circumstance that can change. See, it has to be something different than just the partnership. We've all had, probably, I know I have, had partnerships that were wonderful. I was really enjoying and I'm ministering with somebody, and then something happened and that partnership went away. Or that partnership soured all of a sudden. And so that can't be the joy that Paul talks about later in Philippians when he says, be joyful in all circumstances. That's part of it. But he says here, being confident in this, that he who began a good work will carry it on to completion. Bingo! Now we see Paul's joy linked with God. God doesn't change. And so if our joy is linked to God, our joy can be throughout all circumstances. And Paul says, my joy in my praying for you is because I am confident. I'm confident. I'm confident in who? I'm confident in God. Not myself, and not the circumstances, and not what's happening around me. I am confident in God. So let's dig into this a little bit. He says, he who began a good work. Well, where does the began begin? You know, that would be a good question. He's beginning a good work. Where does that beginning begin? Well, I would propose to you there's two things, or two of the things that I'd like to look at today anyway. There's a physical beginning. We are created. There's a physical beginning and there's a spiritual beginning. So we have a physical beginning. If we look at as a good work, we look at Psalm 139, 13 through 14. David writes, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." We start with the understanding that we are created in a marvelous way. That who we are and what God has made us, how God has made us, is a marvelous and a wonderful thing. And we've lost a lot of that in this society. You know, if he created you tall, he wants you tall. If he created you short, he wants you short. If he created you Irish, he wants you Irish. If he created you Asian, he wants you Asian. If he created you male, he wants you male. And if he created you female, he wants you female. If he created you human, he wants you human. And the disaster that we're going through in this world right now is that we're buying into evolution, which is a chance thing, not a design thing. And we're losing out on the importance of the fact that we're designed. Listen to this. I came across this Camille Paglia. She's an outspoken activist of the LGBTQ community. And she understands that with evolution, the body has no intrinsic purpose. Therefore, the mind can use it for whatever it wants. It's the mind that has the purpose. It's the mind that can decide what's important. She acknowledges that nature has made humans sexually reproducing species. And then she asks the question, so why not defy it? That's just a physical thing, a chance thing. So why not defy it? And she says, fate, not God, has given us this flesh. We have absolute claim over our bodies and may do with them as we see fit. We're just a product of unaffected material forces, conveys no moral message at all. It's all about what our mind says we should be. See, what she's done is she's taken away the fact that we are designed. And when you design something that has a purpose, right? When you knit something, it says he knit us together in his womb. Well, when you knit something that has a purpose. You knit a sweater so that somebody can wear it. You knit a skull cap. You knit a pot holder. I don't know what you knit, but whatever you knit is going to have a purpose. And so when we get away from the fact that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, the beginning is good, God's beginning is good, we lose sight of the fact that we are designed for a purpose. And we look too much at what other people are and what other people do and who other people are, and we wish we were those other people rather than just embracing and thanking God he made us who we are. We are all unique. We have a unique purpose in this life. God has created all of us unique. He's placed us in unique situations, in unique areas, and he has a plan and a purpose for us. And our joy starts with understanding that we have a plan and a purpose. We are designed. By definition, that means we have a purpose. So what else does he say? Well, he also says the beginning is a spiritual beginning. Now, this verse that we just read really does not even address the physical beginning. I threw that in for free. That was all free. That is not what this passage is saying, actually. But I think it is very biblical that we have a beginning that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that physical beginning, we have to start with that, because if we don't start with the understanding that physically we are created for a plan and a purpose, all the rest of it falls apart. But this passage talks more about the spiritual beginning. In fact, the word here, began, is only used one other time in the New Testament, Galatians 3:3. Paul writes to the Galatians, "Are you so foolish? After beginning with the Spirit," are you now trying to attain goal by human effort? So clearly the beginning of the Spirit is the day that we have turned our life over to Christ. We have begun in the Spirit. And in fact, the Bible is pretty clear that when we do that, now God opens up a whole new way of dealing with us, informing us, and helping us understand. In fact, it says in 1 Corinthians, this is what we speak, not in words brought to us by human wisdom, but in words taught us by the Spirit, speaking spiritual words, discerning spiritual truths. The man without the Spirit cannot accept these truths that come from the Spirit, for they are foolishness to him, and he cannot understand them. So the day that we turn our life over to Christ, there is a whole nother dimension that God now is able to open up to us that he couldn't have before. So we need to understand this spiritual beginning a little bit, and we need to understand a few things about what this passage is saying about that spiritual beginning. Being confident in this, that he who began the good work will carry it on to completion. He began the good work. He will carry it on to completion. There's nothing in this passage that talks about us. There's nothing here that says, we got to do something. We got to make it happen. We got this part. God's got this part. We've got this part. No, there's nothing in there. God began it. God's going to complete it. But there's some confusion with this when we read that, because people will then come to something like Matthew 24, 11 through 13, and it says, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people because of the increase of wickedness. The love of most will grow cold, but he who stands firm will be saved to the end. And they'll point at that verse and they'll say, see, some people are going to fall away. Some people who turn their life over to Christ are going to fall away, and we can lose our salvation, and we got to be careful. We got to work hard to keep our salvation. Well, look at that verse, and now look at 1 John 2:19. They went out from us, but they did not really belong to us. For if they had belonged to us, they would have remained with us, but their going showed that none of them belonged to us. So here John is saying, look, they look like us. They actually went out from us, but the fact that they fell away proved that they never were from us. They were never of us. Romans says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus as Lord and believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That is not a magical incantation. That is not some words that we mumble and some words that we spout, and then God says, oh, okay, I will come into you and save you. What we tend to gloss over on that is that if you confess with your mouth Jesus as what? Lord. What happens when you do that? You have just now given Jesus carte blanche to do whatever he wants. He's Lord. He can do whatever he jolly well wants with you, if that's what your commitment was. And now, fortunately, God is loving, and what he wants to do is he wants to give us joy. And what he wants to do is make our life fulfilled. But he has a little bit different way sometimes than we do. But he's saying, I'm Lord. I get to do it my way. I get to be God. Why don't you let me be God? So when we look at it that way, we realize the trials that come our way are really not about destroying our faith. They're about revealing our faith. So if you look at 1 Peter 1:7, Peter writes this, they have come so that your faith, greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may be proved genuine and may result in praise, glory, honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. They have come. Trials have come. 1 Corinthians 10:13, no temptation has seized you except that which is common to man, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ, if you have given him lordship over your life, he can do whatever he wants. But what he's not going to do is do something that is so burdensome and so terrible that you will turn away from him. Now, sometimes the trials we undergo are a lot more than we would have put on ourselves. But God is trying to refine us and grow our faith and reveal to us what our faith is about. We've had, you've had people that have, quote, fallen away from God. And what's one of the reasons they fall away from God? Well, God didn't do this. My son was sick and died, and God didn't heal him. I was going through this terrible, terrible time, and nobody came to help me. They never gave Jesus lordship. They never actually let God be God. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that life isn't hard. I know life is hard. But what I'm saying is that if you really have given lordship to Jesus Christ, then you no longer can stand there and say, well, God didn't do this. So we need that understanding because it's so foundational to our joy. If we don't have the assurance, Paul said, I am confident in this, that he who began a good work will see it through to the end. If we don't have confidence in God and it's up to us, we are always going to be looking over our shoulder, wondering when's the next trial that's going to take me away from God. And it's not to say we're not going to fall and we're not going to stumble and we're not going to do bad things. We are. Look at the Bible. Look at the characters of the Bible. My goodness. David caused murder after he slept with Bathsheba. Look at what Paul did before he became Christian. There's nothing in your past that God won't take care of. In fact, in Philippians 3, we read this, brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining towards what is ahead. Paul says, I know I screw up. I know I fail. I turn to Jesus when I do that. I go to him and I ask forgiveness. And I deal with my relationship with him. And then I pick myself back up and I forget what lied behind. And now I start taking the next step that Jesus wants me to take towards that future that he has in store for me. So how do you know you're saved? Well, you're trying to please Jesus. And when you do fall and when you do stumble, you don't just throw a pity party and say, oh, God let me down. You pick yourself up. You turn back to Jesus and you say, I need you. And you let him start guiding and directing again. Okay, so what's God telling us here in this verse? That we need to understand what God is doing. He has a beginning, and we have assurance. But what we really still haven't talked about is this work. God's doing some kind of work in us, and what is that work? Well, let's take a look at that. Let me read some verses that will show us. Romans 8, 1 through 8. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed in us. 2 Corinthians 4, 17 to 18. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes on not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, what is unseen is eternal. 1 Peter 1, 6 through 7. In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may be proved genuine, and may result in praise, glory, and honor when Christ is revealed. So the work that God is doing in us is he's giving us glory. He's working in us glory. And now that word has lost its impact. I understand. You're probably not all excited about this yet. Glory? Well, I don't even know what that is. I mean, I think it has something to do with holiness. And I know when God talks about glory, there's a lot of times lightning and thunder and flashing and great light show. But I'm not sure why I should be excited about that. Well, let's take a look at these verses that I just read. Let's kind of pull out some of the information of it. First of all, glory, whatever it is, it's eternal. It's going to take us throughout eternity. Whatever it is, it's not worth comparing to our present sufferings. So it's got to be something pretty awesome to be something that our present, because some of our sufferings are pretty severe. And yet, glory, whatever it is much more than that. It's worth far greater than any gold, meaning any wealth or treasure you can imagine. It's worth more than that. It's something that's unseen. So, this is where we get into trouble sometimes, because we can't see the glory directly. We're going to talk a little bit about how to grow in our joy, and that's going to help unpack some of this. But we have to recognize that it is something that is not part of our, or is unseen. The last thing that we get from these verses is that the glory comes from God. It's not from us. The word itself, now if you look at the word itself, it means that which causes wonder. Or another way to put it is that which causes people to marvel. It's like times when you have seen something so beautiful, it takes your breath away. You see a painting, or you see part of creation, or you see a sculpture, or you see something that is just so marvelous. It just like takes your breath away, and it reaches down and touches you in such a deep, deep area. That's what God's trying to do in us. He's saying, look, these trials, I'm not doing this to rain on your parade and make you all upset. I'm doing this because what I'm doing and how I'm doing it is going to show you when you get, and I reveal the glory, it's going to take your breath away. It's going to be something that is just going to be amazing. Now, we got to be careful because, like I said, this comes from God. This glory comes from God. God is not uncovering our glory. He's not revealing the glory that's already in us. This glory comes from God. We got to be careful because there is one character in the Bible who thought he had glory. Satan. Isaiah 14:12 through 15. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth. You once laid low nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend to the tops of the clouds. I will make myself the most high. But you are brought down to the grave, to the depths of the pit. So this is not glory we have. This is glory God is giving to us and building in us so that when it's time to reveal it, it's going to be amazing. You know, think of it this way. When you see that painting that just took your breath away, wow. You don't then turn and say, look at that paint. Look at the yellow, and look at that blue, and look at that paint. No, what you do is you say, that artist, look at the way he shaded those colors. Look at the way he has the subtle nuance of the facial expressions that shows. Look at the way he used light. Look at the way he made the painting come alive. We talk about the artist. We don't talk about the paint. And that's what God's doing in us. He's going to reveal some glory that's going to shine right back to God, and everybody's going to say, oh, this is amazing. God, you are amazing. And that should excite us. We should be excited that when it's finally revealed, it's going to be something that is going to make God be amazing. He's going to use us to do that. He's going to reveal in us glory that we can't even comprehend right now. So, what do we see here? We see God is at work trying to create in us glory. And that glory is something that is amazing. Something that we really need to embrace. We really need to get an idea of what that glory really is. We need to understand that anything that we go through is inconsequential relative to that glory, relative to what God, the beauty that God is going to reveal in us. Now, again, let me tell you what it's not saying. It's not saying that we just kind of disconnect from the world and say, oh, la, 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 my life is a shambles, but I'm going to rejoice in the Lord. Because times do come, and times are hard, and we do struggle. You know, God created country music for a reason, right? Sometimes we do lose our job. Our wife leaves us. She takes the car. She takes the dog. Life gets hard sometimes. And God doesn't want us to just disconnect and say, oh, well, whatever. I'm going to be joyous anyway. No, he's saying, look, those circumstances are ones that I'm going to build in you, something that's far greater than the circumstance you're in. I'm going to take you, and I'm going to shape you and mold you and grow in you. And you're not going to see it all until the day I reveal it, but you should be excited about it right now. And to the degree we talk about growing our faith, that you're going to be excited about it, or growing our joy, you should get more and more excited about what God's doing. And to the degree you're excited about what God's doing is the degree that you're going to discount all the circumstances and rejoice that God is at work. You are assured of that. You know what's happening. You know, despite the things that are going around you, that God is at work. And God is making something so marvelous, so wonderful, that it's going to be amazing throughout eternity. And he's going to do it in us. So how about this? How about we let God be God? How about, crazy thought as it might be, we just let God be God. Let him do what he knows he needs to do. Now, sometimes we bring the circumstance on ourselves, right? Through our sin and through our weaknesses, there are some instances, there are some struggles and trials and that kind of stuff that's our fault, right? But even then, God promises all things work together for good for those who follow after me and called according to my purpose. So even in those things, God kind of weaves those all together and develops and continues to develop in us that glory. So whether it's him bringing the circumstance and it's out of your control, whether it's you causing the circumstance, God is using all of that. And we can rejoice in all of that. Only because we let God be God. So let's talk a little bit about how we grow our joy. We've seen the Epistle of Joy shows us a problem with joy, but reveals the source of joy, and this is all so that we can grow in our joy. And we're going to touch on this real quickly, and then because the rest of Philippians will flesh this out a little bit. The rest of Philippians will help describe a lot more about what's going on here. So I'm just going to touch on these real quickly, but it comes from Philippians 1, 9 through 11. He says this, and it is my prayer that your love may abound more and more with knowledge and discernment, so that you may approve what is excellent, and so be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. So he prays about 5 things. He prays about love. He prays for excellence. He prays that they be pure and blameless, which I would label integrity. And he prays for good works or spiritual fruits. And the other thing we need to note from this, before we get into the actual, a little touch on each of the words, is that this is a sequence, because he says, my prayer is that you love may abound more and more, so that you may approve what is excellent, and so be pure and blameless, and then filled with the fruit of righteousness. It's a sequence of events. Love builds excellence, builds integrity, builds fruit. Now, it's not saying, I got to get all the love stuff figured out, I got to get that all right, and then I'm going to move on to excellence, and then I'm going to get that all right, and then I'm going to move on. No, it's talking about to the degree you are able to love, like I love, to the degree you're able to do that, you're going to be able to pursue excellence. To the degree you're able to do that, you're going to have integrity. To the degree you're going to do that, you're going to experience the fruit of the Spirit. And so we ought to look at these real quickly. Again, we'll look at these real quickly because the rest of Philippians starts talking about how this maps out. So, first of all, love. Love is agape love. It's a love that's a decision. It's not phileo, it's not brotherly love, and it's not the romantic love. It's a love of decision, a decisive love. And he says this, he says it's abounding. So it's something that can grow. He says abounding more and more. So it's definitely something that can grow, but it grows with what? Knowledge and all discernment. You cannot grow the love of God without the knowledge and discernment and truth of God in your life. You can grow other things, but it ain't going to be God's love. You need God's word in your life. You need that doing its work in you so that you can have the love that God has. Next word is excellence. This word actually literally means to differ. It means that as you go through life, you are making decisions about what is best and what is excellent. It's not talking about deciding what's good and bad. It's saying that as you go through life, you are trying to do and trying to pursue what's excellent. And to the degree you grow your love, you're going to begin to see more and more what is excellent, and you're going to begin to pursue that. We make trade-offs all the time in our lives. And without the love of God being the driving force, we will make bad decisions. But even if it's not bad decisions, it's not always the best decision. And so he's saying excellence is about making decisions between what is best and what is excellent. Then integrity. So pure and blameless. He talked about integrity. I would just group those together as integrity. Well, pure comes from basically the root word is sincere. And it's talking more of a personal integrity. Are you sincere? Are you without guile? In fact, the word literally means without wax. And back in the day, they had potters, and if a pot broke, they would put it back together with wax and make it look like it was still good. And they would sell it. And then the person would take it home, and it would fall apart. Well, it wouldn't stand scrutiny. And so being pure means that our motivations are pure. We're not trying to fool anybody. We're trying to be open. We're trying to be not a hypocrite. The next word is blameless. That literally means not causing others to stumble. So, as you're going through life, part of the integrity is not just being pure, but also looking for ways to not cause others to stumble around you. You're thinking about others, and you're trying to remain blameless. Again, all this will be fleshed out later. Fruit. Then there is the fruit that comes. Well, that's basically good works. Now, sometimes people will say, the fruit of the Spirit, well, that's love, joy, peace, patience. Those are attitudes. Those are kind of attitudes of things that we should have. Well, no, because the context is from Galatians 5, 19 through 23, and Paul starts out saying the acts of the sinful nature is da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness. So it's tied to acts. So the fruit of the Spirit has to be acts of love, acts of being a peacemaker, acts of patience, acts of kindness. And so as we act, as we put those into practice, God is saying your joy is going to increase because you're going to see more and more that glory that I'm wanting to build in you. So, the conclusion here. We have the Epistle of Joy showing us the problem with joy while revealing the source of joy so that we can grow in our joy. And I just want to share one more verse with you that I love. I love how the Bible helps us understand things by saying it just a little bit different way. It says here in 2 Corinthians 3, 16 through 18, but whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. We talked about that, the veil, the understanding now. We can understand spiritual truths. That veil is taken away. And now the Lord is Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we, who with unveiled faces all reflect, what? The Lord's glory. And we're being transformed into his likeness with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord who is Spirit. Ever-increasing glory. It's step by step. Bit by bit. Circumstance by circumstance. As long as we have turned our life and face Christ, he's going to bring glory to us. And as we give ourselves more fully to him, we're going to be able to understand more about that glory, be more excited about that glory, be more motivated to get more of that glory, so that when God does reveal it, it's going to take our breath away. So let me suggest, let God be God. Let him work through the circumstances. In fact, to the degree you can, get excited about the circumstances. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying I got it dialed in. But I do know this. He who began the good work, he's going to see it through. And we just need to let God be God and let him figure out how he's going to do that. And to the degree we can is the degree we're going to rejoice and have joy in all circumstances. Let's pray. Father,